Welcome to Sisters in Company Talking About It live show. Hosted by me, Dr. Sharon Cradle and Sherelle Higgins. We will be discussing intriguing, intricate, inspirational, informative, and intelligent topics with our individual twists and talents.
We will present real stories, real solutions, and engage in real talk.
So we invite you to be our company every Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock p.m. as we focus on transcendent thinking that will move you forward. You become the company you keep. What company do you keep?
Oh yeah, we are biological sisters by way of the south side of Chicago. So get ready to keep company with us and our guests as we talk about it.
Welcome to the Sunday at 3 o'clock edition of our show. I am Dr. Sharon Cradle, and I am the oldest of this dynamic duo, and we are here to talk about health and wellness, and we have two wonderful guests today.
Yes, and you know, we all started in January saying how we were going to do better with our health, and here we are halfway through the year, laying on the couch, sitting around doing nothing, just making up all the reasons why we shouldn't. And interestingly enough, I did actually get up this morning and go on a 2.75 mile walk. Mm-hmm. I ran a little bit with that too, so that means tomorrow I won't be able to move that good. But I figure since we were going to be talking about health and wellness today, I might as well at least kick off my own health and wellness all over again.
Well, Sherelle, you have to speak for yourself because I try to get it in a couple times a week. I don't care where I am after work. I go running, go walking. I try to do something just to keep my body moving and to keep my mind renewed. And I want to remind everybody, all of our Facebook followers, please go on listenvisionlive.com because as you very well know, there's a storm, I think, in the area somewhere. And so we're already starting to experience challenges with being linked into Facebook. So I had to log out and I had to come back in, so I lost some folks, so hopefully you all will come back on. But like we normally do, I like to start out with a scripture, and I'm not going to read the exact scripture because I'm going to pull out some pieces for this particular scripture because it goes along with the two guests and the topics that we have here today. And it comes from 2 Corinthians 5:17, and it talks about rebuilding, transforming, and implementing through Christ. I'll read that again. It talks about rebuilding, transforming, and implementing through Christ. And our two guests here really are going to be very good at talking about this particular topic today. So we are ready to rock and roll. I think Sherelle want to share some things with you before we get started.
Oh, absolutely. So as you all know, I was not here last week because I kicked off my long week with taking off on Thursday to go and support my girlfriend of 34 years from Virginia State University who was getting married for the first time. And I was down in Lynchburg with my husband, and because of poor planning, I actually planned to go down there but didn't really think it through when I started to plan to go to New Orleans and take my husband for his birthday. And so we went to Lynchburg on Thursday and we left Friday after the reception, which was over about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, and drove 3 hours home and had to get up 3 hours later to catch a flight to New Orleans. And then once we got to New Orleans, we drove 5 hours down to Shreveport so that I could visit my great aunt and my cousins. And what was interesting about that is, you know, when you've been in a relationship a long time, at some point everybody have to know where their lane starts and stop. And so for me, when I'm with my husband, my lane is not driving. That is not my lane. That's what he does, and that's the only person in the car who can drive. And so because we had such a long 24 to 48 hours, I woke up from a nap, and I was like, "You want me to drive?" He was like, you want to drive? I was like, oh my God, what is going on? I was like, yeah. And he actually pulled over and let me drive for about 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
He did.
That's major. Jim must have been tired.
That's what I said.
Wow. Because he normally drives us when we used to drive to Chicago, drive all the way there nonstop.
And all the way back.
And all the way back.
And that's 12 hours there and 12 hours back.
Exactly.
So he actually let me drive. So I was shocked. And I said, well, go ahead and take my picture so I can prove that I was driving. But he didn't do it because, he don't know how to cooperate a lot. So we had a great time in Shreveport. On our way back from Shreveport, we stayed there for about 24 hours. We stopped in Baton Rouge and stayed overnight.
Okay.
And had a good time in Baton Rouge. And then we went back to New Orleans, stayed there for 2 nights. Well, at least he did. And then he left, took an early flight out on Wednesday, and I stayed until Friday and kind of hung out with my younger sister, which was a great time for me. And so, yeah, that's my life. And then I actually was going to come back today, but then I started thinking about it. I said, you know what, just stop yourself. You don't need to fly in this afternoon and then be rushing to get to the show and then have to go to work tomorrow. So I came back a couple days early just so I can catch up. And then, as you know, I'm a soccer mom, so my son played soccer yesterday and play again today. So when the show was over, I had to make a beeline to the soccer fields.
Yes.
So anyway.
And those of you that watched the show last week, we had a wonderful co-host, Walita Hawkins. Let's give her a shout out. She came in and she sat in for Sherelle, and it was just wonderful. And so that's what this show is about. It's about being inclusive and just getting everybody involved and, showcasing other people's talents, because people have talents, that they're sometimes not aware of. And she was a little nervous at first, but she handled her business and she did a great job.
Yeah, and I love the topic. And speaking of guest co-hosts, next week Sharon won't be here.
Right.
And so what we want to do is have a small contest to see who's going to come to the show and guest co-host with me next week.
Yes.
And so what we're asking you to do is either drop a comment in your feed right now to tell us why we should pick you. Keep it short because we don't want to do a lot of reading. We have a lot of stuff going on. We just want you to give us 1 or 2 words to describe what you would bring to the show. And or you can post it on our page, Sisters in Company Talking About It. You can post it on that page to tell us why I should pick you, why Sharon and I should pick you to co-host with me next week. The only ground rule we have is that you have to be dynamic. You have to have something to say, and you have to be able to come into the studio.
Exactly. And you have to be able to deal with Sherelle, right?
No,
Go back and forth with
part.
Sherelle.
That's the easy
See,
part.
I can do that because I'm her sister. So you got to come ready to rock and roll.
Bring your A game.
Yes. And so we're going to transition quickly because we have 2 phenomenal guests here today. And the conversation and our guests, it is so timely in terms of what's been happening in the world. We've had 2 that people know of, famous, Kate Spade, and we also Anthony Bourdain, who both have committed suicide. Not sure why, but we do understand that in many instances, or some of those cases, that they may have been connected to, taking some type of opioid because of depression or, whatever it was. And so I just thought it was just very important to talk about it. And also to really talk about, someone said the other day that African Americans don't commit suicide. And I just didn't. Exactly. And they may not always, hang themselves or something, but people drink themselves to death, all kinds of things that people do to commit suicide. And
we don't get the publicity
exactly.
behind it.
And so we really need to have an educated conversation around opioids, about taking care of our health overall. And so we're going to have Dr. Anton Bazell to come in and really talk with us about that, and just have some real talk and talk to us about what it is he's doing in his business around that whole effort of opioids. And then we have Rochelle T. Parks to come and talk about it. She calls herself the health motivator. And so just to talk to us about, just our overall health and how it also impacts our mental state. So we're going to ask Anton to just come on over and join us. And while he's coming, we want everyone to please log in to listenvisionlive.com. And you also can call in and participate by calling 833-202-8255. You can call in and participate, 833-202-8255. Okay. Is my mic on? All right, so we're back. Hi, Anton.
How you doing, Sharon?
I'm wonderful. Everyone, I want to introduce you to Dr. Anton Bazell, and I have to just give some kudos to this awesome man. He is a cousin, and by marriage, and one of the things about Anton that you will find out is that he just has a heart of gold. And he believes in giving back and helping. And so anytime I call on him or the family calls on him, he just does not hesitate to step up. And so I just always appreciate that, Anton, and bless you for that. So, Anton, speaking to the mic, and introduce yourself to our audience and, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll start the conversation.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Anton Bazell. I am actually a native of New Bern, North Carolina.
Oh, goodness.
Specifically, not just New Bern, but James City, North
City.
Carolina. And I guess I should give a shout out. I see my mom is online
Yes,
right
she
now.
is. Hi.
As well as some cousins. So
Yes.
welcome. But again, I am Anton Bazell. I am actually a family physician. Have been working in the area of addiction medicine since 2000. Particularly, I used to be a medical officer, a physician for the National Institutes of Health, particularly with the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism. From that point on, I became a medical officer for the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. People know it as by the name of SAMHSA. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I was actually, since 2003, I was really working in the area of prescription drugs. And so really know a lot of the aspects with that. And we've been knowing really for a while that we were headed towards an epidemic. And I have my theories behind that, but and we'll definitely talk about some of those things as well. But glad to be with you today and looking forward to a great conversation.
Okay, and so Anton also owns his own business. He's an entrepreneur, the Bazell Group. He can tell you a little bit about that and his work with prescription drugs through his company. But Anton graduated from UVA and medical from, I guess, as a medical doctor. Went to school there, and so we're just so proud of him. And so let's just get to the conversation. So tell us. I like the way you said prescription drugs. We have this. I guess that's the medical term, opioids, and I had to say it like that because that's a pretty tricky word to pronounce. But tell us what that is and why we are at this state with so many people being on drugs.
Okay, so one of the things that we really have to realize, we are in an epidemic. The president did declare an epidemic for prescription opioids containing opioids.
Okay.
One of the things that, and basically in a nutshell, is pain medications. One of the things about opioids is actually a drug that pretty much reduces the body's perception to pain. So a lot of people know it as like oxycodone or hydrocodone, as well as some of the others. But then I should also say that an opioid there's a legal form as well as an illegal form. We've been knowing this for many years. Heroin is an illegal form,
okay.
And all that prescription opioids is a legal form of opioids. And so we've been seeing really for about at least the last 20 years, we've known that there's been at least 1 million heroin addicted persons in the United States alone. Mm-hmm. But then we started seeing where there was an increase in methadone that was being deaths that were occurring in the late 90s and early 2000s. And then when we started really looking at reducing the amount of individuals who were starting to die at that point, we then began putting like prescription drug monitoring programs in place so that now every state has a prescription drug monitoring in place. With those aspects in place, we started seeing when people are now going to the legal substances. So we found where there were kids who were raiding their grandmother's medicine cabinets, or if you're going on, let's say, real estate agents and you had an open house, we saw where there were raids going on when people were going into medicine cabinets. We then were seeing really about 10 years ago, there were parties that were even taking place where people would come and do what was called salad bowling. They would take all the medications and dump them into one bowl. And when you put alcohol in place with that, people were just taking out drugs and just reaching into the bowl and just taking it. So we started seeing where there were people like that were starting to do that. But we began really cracking down on the illegal substance, and then we started seeing where people were starting to then go towards the prescription opioids to really cover up probably some underlying issues that were occurring. At that point, we then started seeing people now moving back towards the heroin.
Yes.
So when we started seeing deaths of, let's say, 16-year-olds in certain counties or in other places, we then became very even more cognizant of it because more people started dying. When you mix drugs with other drugs, you have issues that can occur. And so this is what we're seeing now. We're really in an epidemic where we're having a lot of folks that are dying. And since the program does talk about women, we're actually seeing an increase in women who are dying from death. When we look from 1999 and really until 2015, we saw an increase of around 850% increase in deaths amongst women. And then when we really look at those who were using it, it was about a 471% increase in women, but a 215% increase in men. Now, why do women use it? There are many underlying reasons. Women.
Hold on.
Sure,
One quick second. I just have one question. When we talk about the word epidemic, I did a little research, and we know right now that according to the last stats I saw from March, that 115 people are dying every day in the United States. So what makes it an epidemic?
So what makes it an epidemic? Now, I have my theory, but I'm not going to go into that theory. But really, because it's affecting everyone across, it's affecting every race, every state, every city, every domicile. And so there's no one that does not know someone that has run into a problem. We're hearing all the time of people who are dying. And so, again, my theory is that people have been dying for many years.
Right.
But now we have a different face of the drug.
Yes.
And so now, normally in my 9 to 5, I can't say that.
That's right.
But it's Sunday and the Lord will forgive me.
Okay, well, let me ask you this question. How do you respond to people who are saying that now because it's disproportionately impacting Caucasians, that it's now an epidemic, as before when it was, us using heroin, nobody really cared?
Yeah, that's really what I was really getting into. But not only that, it's not just Caucasians who are dying, but now it's a lot of folks who are dying. I'm hearing of folks, especially African Americans, American Indians, Alaskan Native. It's really affecting every racial population and ethnic group as possible. So really what we're seeing right now is really what's called an epidemic. And so there's no one that is not affected by this. Again, we have people that are in our jobs, in our churches, in our homes, in our families that are really being affected by this. And people are really dying because now you have to really realize what is going on. What is the underlying reason why people are now self-medicating and taking these drugs? And so that's one of the things we have to think about.
And I would say that they're addictive, first of all. And I remember when Ira had his last back surgery, they gave him oxycodone, they gave him just like 4 different medications. I can't remember the name of them. And he woke up one day and he was hallucinating. And he just decided to go cold turkey. And they did not recommend that. But he said he knew then that if he continued with that medication, that, no telling what could have happened. And so it's highly addictive.
Yes, in fact, it's very addictive, and so I tried one time before for some pain that I had, and trust me, I took one and I was like, never again.
Exactly.
So that was just a small dose of a prescription opioid. But what we really tell people today, and if you really look at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention or CDC's guidelines, we recommend that you start low and go slow.
Right.
So a lot of times we're having physicians who are really putting you on these high dosages of medicines, and then people really become addicted to that. And so we are really, again, if there's something that comes across, you start low and then you go slow. And so that's one of the things we really have to think about when it comes to opioids.
So what's the consequences for the medical professionals starting high and knowing and understanding how addictive these drugs are? I know a lot of this has to do with money, and the pharmaceutical companies making a lot of money off these doctors prescribing these drugs and getting people addicted. So what's the consequences for the doctors for prescribing these drugs at such a high rate?
Yes. So one of the things about it, I've been on the other side as a physician. I understand, but we do have laws in place. Every state is different, and so when we really look at across the United States, there are different consequences for everyone. These are controlled substances. The Drug Enforcement Administration, I like to tell people that, they have their eye on those physicians that are overprescribing.
Yes.
We're now starting to see where there are physicians that are actually going to prison for overprescribing of pain. Now, I like to say this. Now, we have other measures that are being put in place that we really have to be cognizant of because, for instance, if we're looking at reducing the amount of drugs or opioids that are available.
Yes.
Now, I don't know about you. I am starting to get up in age, but eventually I'm going to need. I'm going to have pain. We all.
That's right.
My best friend said we all got pain.
That's right.
We all have pain, and so we all are going to have some pain. But
Yeah.
I want to have that available just in case. When we looked at the methamphetamine, when we had a crisis with methamphetamines about maybe 8 years ago, we saw then that the pharmacies, or I should say laws, were put in place that kept us from really even getting just simple sinus medication.
Right.
I was on the other end to fight that. Now, every time I go get sinus medication, I have to show my driver's license.
Isn't that something?
Because people were cooking it and making methamphetamine.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
I just hope we don't get into that situation again where if I'm in pain, I need my pain medicine.
So let me just ask the question. I don't know who's out there thinking the same thing, but I'm sure there is. What is the difference now between opioid addiction and crack cocaine addiction? And the reason I ask that is because I know in southern Maryland, in that region, every time I'm down there, I see these signs. And the signs are, so many people overdosed, so many people died. And they literally have signs, and it says opioids and heroin. So why is there a distinction in between the two?
I tell people all the time that prescription drugs and addiction waxes and wanes because it may be up now, but it may be down later. I like to use the analogy, since we're across from Howard University, when we're looking at, like, let's say alcohol on college campuses, if you squeeze the balloon on college campuses, it's going to drive them out into the cities.
Yes.
If the cities get tougher laws, then it's going to drive them back into the campus. We have to look at some kind of way to really combat this on all fronts. And so when we look at really opioids, we're really seeing where we're now start with the increase of prescription drug monitoring programs, doctors being taught. We're training doctors every day about how to stay pharmacovigilant about the prescribing the drugs. But when we see this, we also are putting in place those things that are now controlling the number of people who are using and misusing and abusing and dying from, or I should say dying from the drugs as well. So one of the things that we have to really face, there will be a time when we're now starting to see the numbers decreasing for opioids.
Okay.
Now, you may not hear it because the deaths are still rising, but for at least the last year and a half, we started seeing opioid abuse go down. Where they're going is to crack cocaine.
Exactly.
We're already seeing that now into the other stimulants.
And
I'll say this, we do not have any treatment that's FDA approved at the present time for those types of things. And so there are some experimental drugs out there. There are some doctors that are trying some things, but for the most part, we do not have the drugs and to really treat this. And so we're moving back into that era
Isn't
again.
that something?
And
Just
so
like
again,
with heroin, because heroin, I remember, growing up in the inner city, and I would hear people talking about heroin, and that was in the 70s. And so, I don't know if heroin ever left, but we did have a transition, I guess, from heroin to crack cocaine, I guess to cocaine, now to opioids. And I guess they've all really have been around for a long time. It's just the one that spikes in terms of the amount of use. And for opioids, everybody is not getting them legally, right?
Correct.
And so do you know of any data that shows that folks that are selling them illegally are being arrested at the same rates of people that were selling crack cocaine illegally?
Well, I can't really get into those numbers, but what I will say is this. We're starting to see where a lot of folks, again, are really using it and abusing it. And those that are selling, we know who you are. They're starting to crack down. When the epidemic really, before it really started, the myth was that the drugs were being bought off the internet and that they were coming in from other countries or being sold. But what we're finding is that the majority of, almost like 80% are getting them from a family or friend.
Exactly.
So, where are the family and friend getting them from? Are from physicians. So that's one of the reasons why we're out there on the streets and in the hospitals and the clinics trying to explain to doctors all the time that you really have to learn how to really write the prescriptions and to really understand what the reason for the folks coming in that are needing the drugs and also needing it for pain, but making sure we're addressing the underlying issues as well.
That's
when
right.
it comes to that.
And we have a call. Can we try to take a call?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, caller.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Philip from Chicago, as usual.
Hi, Philip. Thanks for calling. What's your question?
Hey, that's one. I'm understanding the problem with, especially with the whole what they call opioids thing. But is there, when we talk about holistic medicine, I know in our community we talk about Dr. Sadie and Baba Dick Gregory was very instrumental in health and longevity. Is there anything that we can look at towards like vitamins and minerals that could help us with dealing with some of our pain and even improving our health more than prescription drugs?
Yeah, let me just say this. I'm a believer that whatever it takes to get off the drugs, you do it. Whether that is spiritual, or whether it's physical activity, or whether it's just trying it cold turkey or cognitive therapy. But I really say that sometimes your best psychologist or psychiatrist can be your family and friends. I believe in that you should really listen to your family and friends, because if you're running into issues, they're going to ask you, have you ever felt the need to cut down on, let's say, your prescription drugs or your alcohol use? Or do you get annoyed by those things? Or do you ever need it just like wake up in the morning or get angry? All those types of things. If you fall into a category such as that, and you know that you're using drugs or those types of substances, then really whatever it takes to get off, I say do it, because there are really many programs that are out there that you can really try to do it. Now, whether vitamins or minerals can be used is really to each his own. If it works, try it. If it doesn't work, that's what the medications are there for. A lot of people are really afraid to really get on those medications, such as a methadone or another medication called buprenorphine or Suboxone, because they're so afraid of replacing a drug with a drug.
Exactly.
But let's just say that when someone gets on a drug such as methadone, it's in a controlled environment, and you go to the clinic to get those things. But we have newer medications out these days, such as injectable naltrexone, where you can go and get once a month, or you can actually get buprenorphine and get the tablets or the film to actually take. And those types of things you can actually use to really keep you not just from using, but it will decrease the cravings. But it also helps us cut down on diversion as well.
I want to circle back. Thank you for calling, Phil.
Yeah, thank you, Phil.
I want to circle back because I was diagnosed with bronchiospasms and was given, and this drug is escaping me right now, but was given this prescription for this pain med, and somebody actually asked me to give them some of it. And so to me, it's my responsibility to not share drugs with people who are not. I wasn't even going to take it, so I certainly wasn't going to give it to anybody because the doctor said he didn't want to have to wean me off. Once he said that, it was a wrap. But at some point we have to accept responsibility, and if we are sharing prescription drugs with those that is not prescribed for, we are part of the problem and not part of the solution.
Well, can I tell you what I do know for sure with some seniors? Prescription drugs are expensive.
Oh, absolutely.
And I know that some seniors share drugs with one another. And so is there any effort or movement to try to curtail the cost of some of these prescription drugs so that people won't be in a situation where they have to share? And it's just not opioids that they're sharing. They're sharing eye drops, all kind of things, because stuff is so expensive.
Well, there's a movement now with the current administration that they're trying to bring the prices down. And so we're in this situation now where President Trump is trying to do that. And so we will see where we go from this, because it will be a battle with the drug companies.
Oh, yes.
But again, if I'm a senior and I'm sharing your medication, again, even if it's the same medication that you're using that someone else or your husband has run out of, if you give them a medication, that's actually prescription drug misuse.
Exactly.
And so we have a lot of people who are misusing drugs, or it could be a different strength and all those types of things. But if it's not prescribed for you, then it's misuse. But then we fall into the category of abuse, those who are taking the medication for other reasons than what was intended for. And so those are the things we're running into. But when you talk about taking back...
Hold on one second. Let's take this call.
Okay.
1 second.
Oh, we got the phone hopping today. Look what you did.
Hello,
Antoine.
caller. Welcome to Sisters in Company.
Hello, good afternoon. This is Michael.
Hi, Michael. What's your question?
Hey, how are you? I actually have a question relative to the opioid addiction crisis and the use of Narcan. I would love to hear you all have a dialogue with your guest on its use and its provision throughout so many communities now, including emergency workers.
Very good question.
Yes. So as you know, we now have a drug called naloxone, and so it is pretty much every first responder is really required to have it, being emergency medical tech, physicians, firehouses, as well as many others. And so we're starting to see where there are some individuals who they will overdose on drugs, and when they're found. And even parents as well as many others. And so they have the injectable kits that now can reverse the opioids that are now on board within their bodies. And I'll just keep it there. I could talk about the receptors and all those things and reversing the receptors. But now we're now having this. But what we're saying is, and we're now saying that is a form of prevention. It's really not the prevention that we're used to, but now it's really preventing death.
Yes.
But we're falling into the situation where we're now preventing that death in people sometimes 5 and 6 times.
Wow.
But then there are other cities where they do not have enough supply for most people to have it even once. And so we really have to look at, what are we doing to really share that, as well as to ensure that everyone who is falling victim to this or are in close to overdosing, that we do have the availability of naloxone. And so, again, everyone, if you have someone that is being treated for pain meds, they do have the propensity to fall into that category if they're using opioids. And so it's always good to have it around just in case. And also those individuals who are being treated for an opioid use disorder who are on those drugs, you should also keep it in place, because if that person falls victim to being overdosing, then you definitely need to have that handy, really, because so we can really bring them back to life. And really, but we see it, if that occurs, what happens after that moment is important. We need to make sure that they get some kind of referral to treatment for whatever issues, so that they are treating that and not continue to come into the emergency medical services and situations.
So I hope that answered your question, Michael. Thank you for calling. And we have about 3 more minutes for this segment. So I want to give Dr. Bazell the opportunity to talk to us about his work around opioids and what he does in his business, and to share with us, I think you were just newly elected as the president of your local chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated.
Thanks, Sharon. She's one of my biggest supporters. And yes, let me just first give a shout out for the Delta Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated in the heart of Baltimore, Maryland.
Yes.
And we are the 4th largest chapter in Alpha, and we're the 4th oldest grad chapter in Alpha, and we're going to celebrate our 100th year in 2019.
Wow.
And so really what we do, as far as myself, again, as the Bazell Group, we really are what's called a management consulting firm. We're located in the Washington, D.C. area, as well as we have an office in Atlanta, Georgia. And so we do everything from research and evaluation to technical assistance and training, conference services, as well as auditing and compliance, as well as many other aspects. And so most of our work is really around health and human services. And so we do everything from work with autism, substance abuse and behavioral health, everything from maternal and child health and global health. We also are involved with suicide as well.
Yes.
One of the contracts that we have, and I heard you earlier on the segment, we're dealing with suicide prevention in the military. So we're providing marketing and marketing communication aspects for the Department of Defense. And one of the things, just right now while we're here talking about suicide, over the last 20 years, we have seen an increase in suicide. Our company just did, we published along with, for the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, we looked at a publication, we did all the research for suicide in American Indians and Alaskan Native, which has doubled in the 20 years. But I also remind people that when we're looking at African American boys between the age of 5 and 10, they have also doubled in the last 20 years.
Wow.
What's going on with our folks, and and what can we do to make sure that does not happen? And so again, we're on the forefront of many other health projects going on in the nation. We are also again working with the CDC as well as SAMHSA, the as well as on the Food and Drug Administration, as well as many others. But again, we're one of those companies that are out there, and I should say that they're in the community doing great work. And I think it's evident because last year for Inc. magazine, we were the 137th fastest growing company in the United States. We were number 2 in Maryland, and we were 3 as far as African American owners. And so definitely that's really due to the dedication and hard work of the 60 plus individuals, who are actually close to 70 individuals that are working for us within Atlanta, Georgia, the DC area, as well as many states around the nation.
Yes. Awesome. Well, thank you. We could really have stayed here for another hour.
We really could have.
Yes, having this conversation. So, Anton, thank you so much. And if anybody wanted to get in contact with you, how could they reach you?
Sure. You can reach us at www.thebizellgroup.com, and that's www.thebizellgroup.com. So thebizellgroup.com. And you can definitely reach us via that way.
Yes. So thank you. We're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to have the health motivator, Rochelle T. Parks, on. And I think this is just a great segue in terms of what we've been talking about now. Once, we're off the drugs and everything, then what do we do to take care of ourselves? So we'll be back shortly.
All right. Thank you.
Welcome to Sisters in Company Talking About It live show. Hosted by me, Dr. Sharon Cradle and Sherelle Higgins. We will be discussing intriguing, intricate, inspirational, informative, and intelligent topics with our individual twists and talents.
We will present real stories, real solutions, and engage in real talk.
So we invite you to be our company every Sunday afternoon at 3:00 p.m. as we focus on transcendent thinking that will move you forward. You become the company you keep. What company do you keep?
Oh yeah, we are biological sisters by way of the south side of Chicago. So get ready to keep company with us and our guests as we talk about it.
Welcome back to Sisters in Company Live. That first segment was fire. And I was telling Dr. Bazell when he left, I said, we're going to have to do a part 2 for the show. And he said, absolutely, because we need to talk about alcohol. And so, yes, we will. So we'll have him back when his schedule allows. But I just think this is a great transition to this segment. We now have our guest, Rochelle T. Parks, the health motivator. And I don't know if you all can see her arms, but, people always talked about Michelle Obama arms, but I don't know Rochelle T's arms. I guess I need to hook up with you and try to get me some arms like that, right? Exactly. Well, Rochelle, introduce yourself to our audience and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing.
I would love to. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. I'm so excited. So I'm Rochelle T. Parks. I am a native of Houston, Texas. Baby of 8 children. That's just, I always have to say that I am the baby.
Wow.
So I'm a graduate of Howard University.
Yeah.
Right across the street.
Absolutely. My old stomping ground.
Yes.
So I am a certified health coach and personal trainer. I am a wife of 24 plus years. I'm a mother of 3. Have 3 children. 2 of them are here with me today.
Baby girls.
Absolutely. So what I like to tell people is, people say, what do you do? Well, I like to help people connect the dots. And so they can see that how they feel from day to day has everything to do with what they put in their bodies and what they expose them to. And so I call myself the health motivator because if you see, I do a lot of posting on social media.
Yes.
And it's just not to say, hey, look at me, look at what I'm doing, but it's to show you I don't just talk about it, I am about it.
Exactly.
What's that song say? Walk it like you talk it.
And look, Rochelle didn't say one of the most important pieces. You are a retiring lieutenant colonel
in the United States Army.
Yes.
Congratulations. Thank you for your service.
I'm telling you, it's just awesome. And so let's talk about why health, Rochelle. What was the impetus or your drive to really get into this area?
Well, to be quite honest, it's something I've always been interested in. So as a child, I thought I was going to be a physician. I mean, everybody knew Rochelle was going to be a pediatrician. I went to high school for the health professions. So science and all things health has always been my goal. Even I took the MCATs, and when I was at Howard, I did take the MCATs. But by then, I kind of knew that's not the life I wanted. I had met my husband then. And I was like, no, I don't think that's the life I wanted. But how I see it is God just brought that thing full circle, right? So no, I'm not prescribing medication. No, I'm not doing that, but I'm still helping people feel better. And so health has always been a great passion of mine. And being the, so both of my parents are deceased. I've lost both of my parents to lung cancer. I've lost 2 brothers already. And so anything that I can do, if it's anything I can say that would just reach one person, then it's worth it.
Exactly. And so one of the things I love about Rochelle is that she includes her children. And so if you've ever seen her on Facebook Live, the youngest one more so than the oldest one, but the youngest one, she involves them. And talk about your series that you do when you go to the grocery store and you film live. And I think you are doing the plank challenge and all of that. So talk about that.
So I believe we perish for lack of knowledge, right? So a lot of times people don't know what they don't know. And so I try to educate them, and I'm a big proponent of reading labels, right? I say the devil is in the details, right? And so I've known too many people who look fit, they may feel great, but they've died of massive heart attacks, right? So what I tell people is you never know what's going on in the inside, right? You never know. And so become a label reader. So I do things like, so I offer lots of services, but one of them are grocery store tours.
Yes, I love it.
And then sometimes I just go in the grocery store and I may see something that I'm like, oh my goodness, the people need to know this. I mean, it's terrible that they can serve things or they can sell us things that are harmful to our health. There are a lot of things that are legal in the United States that are banned in other countries.
Yes.
You know, a lot of things that we can purchase. And so I just go in the grocery store and I may see something and I just go Facebook Live and just show the people what's going on. I know the folks in the store looking at me kind of crazy or whatever, but I've actually had people stop and like participate and listen because I'm just trying to educate the masses. I truly believe we perish for lack of knowledge.
Right, and it's so much to know.
So much.
And then there's always conflicting information.
Right.
One day you can drink red wine. One day you can't drink red wine. I mean, I'm just
you
serious.
can drink coffee. The next
One
day
day
you
you
should
can't.
have a shot of vodka.
Exactly. And so it's just confusing and hard to know what's what. And so why get your children involved?
Wow. So I tell people, people say things like, oh, let the kids have it. They're young. They're going to burn it off or whatever. And I say, well, what makes you think that when the child reaches the age of 30 or 35, all of a sudden the light switch is going to go off and they're going to stop?
Right.
So
right, because we don't.
You know, we don't.
That's
So
right.
if you don't teach them now, how are they going to know? To me, it's like sharing the gospel. I can only share the information. Right. Like, so people, my son who's 21, he may still, certain things he won't do, but we don't do pork anymore, but every now and then he may still have bacon. But guess what? I've taught him the way.
Right.
It's up to him now.
Yes.
So
Right.
my kids, I share. Well, they're still kids, so I control them, right?
Right.
I bring the food in the house, so they eat what I give them.
That's right.
But after that,
That's some old school parenting right there.
they eat what I give them. People say, Rochelle, how do you get your kids to eat it? I said, what do you mean?
It's food in the house. They're going to eat
They're going to eat it.
That's
I
right.
tell them to eat it. You know?
Exactly.
That's what it is.
And they will eat when they get hungry. won't they?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Or they'll
Again,
fast.
that's old school parenting.
But something else that you do, I think, is just so wonderful is you bake bread.
I do.
Talk about that.
That's the best.
Yes.
So bread has gotten a bad rap, right?
Yes,
First
it
of all,
has.
I mean, with Jesus being the bread of life, how can that be bad, right?
Go ahead now, Rochelle.
So bread has gotten a bad rap, and so with the bread that they're talking about is the bread on the shelf.
Yes.
Right, the bread in the store on the shelf is if it's on the shelf, it has very little nutritional value. And so what I've learned to do is I make my own flour. So I have
Right.
a miller. I mill my own flour, make my own whole wheat flour, and I have a Bosch mixer which mixes the dough and everything. But what you got to know is that little wheat kernel, right? It's called a wheat berry. Once it's exposed, you lose up to 90% of the nutrients within 72 hours.
Oh, wow.
And so anything that's on the shelf really has
Right.
little to no nutritional value, right? The bread that I have, right, no preservatives, all the B vitamins, So the running joke, if someone has like a bad attitude, I'd be like, they need some bread. They need some B vitamins.
Some of your bread.
Right, some of my bread. But it has no preservatives, and so I have to freeze it. I can freeze it up to 6 months, the portion that we're not eating, but it's just, when you taste my bread, you don't want to eat the bread off the shelf anymore.
Right.
Interesting you brought up bread. My husband was reading something to me today that he saw on Facebook about in some countries they're now starting to use what they call cockroach bread. And that they were saying that it provides like 90% more proteins and vitamins and stuff using cockroaches. Now, I don't know that I'm going to eat that, but it sounded interesting.
I haven't heard that one.
No, but isn't that what Anthony Bourdain was really all about? He was going into parts unknown, and so the foods that we have over here and that we will eat, they won't eat because they're looking at us, and so it's the same thing. So we have a call. Let's take a call.
Okay, awesome.
Hello, caller. How can we help you?
Hello, ladies.
Hi.
First and foremost, my name's Perry Whaley. I'm calling from Atlanta, Georgia.
Yes.
And the two ladies that are asking, Sherelle and her sister, Sharon, both went to college with me at Virginia State University. And I'm here in Atlanta.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
viewing
Hey, Perry.
Hey, Perry. What's your question?
Did we lose him?
Did we lose you, Perry? I think so. We'll continue the conversation, and hopefully he can call back. Okay. So Rochelle, Rochelle is just not about the nutrition part. It's you also do physical fitness, and you're a personal trainer. Share with us, how did you get involved with being a personal trainer, and what you're doing around that work and helping people.
So I've been personal training over 20 years now, and it actually started with me, to be quite honest. So after I had my first child, right, who's now 21, so this was, he was born December of 96, and the military gives you 6 months to get yourself back in shape before you take your physical fitness test. And that test I took after I had my son, I passed my run with 3 seconds to spare. And I said, this has got to stop. We can't do this anymore. And it was actually, my motivator was Oprah Winfrey. To be quite honest. This was during the time when she was working with Bob Greene.
Yes.
And it was, when she was doing the marathons. And I said, you know what, if she can do it, I can do it. So that was really my first motivation to start exercising. And then I started bodybuilding.
Right.
And people saw my transformation. And from that, people said, can you train me? Yes. And I started training others. And that was in the late 90s. And so I've been training since then. And so now, I train ladies. I can train anybody.
Right.
But, of course, I'm drawn. I have a heart for the ladies because I know our struggles.
Right.
I know our struggles.
Right.
And so I train ladies now. I do 2 days a week. And I do a boot camp on the weekends. And it's more than training. It's a fellowship.
Yes, it is.
It's my ministry, actually.
Yes.
So it's actually more than physical training.
So let's take this caller.
Hello, caller.
Hello, ladies. I'm back. This is Perry again. I got back through.
Okay.
I just want to say it's a wonderful thing that you ladies are doing, spreading information and informing people about health issues. In Atlanta, I have an organization that I'm spreading awareness all around the country, and I just love what you're doing and anything positive. I love it, especially Virginia State University.
Well, thank you. That was very nice. Thank you for calling. Did you have any other comments or another question?
He didn't call up here and said what he had to say. You got to love our Virginia State Trojan family.
Yes.
Straight to the point.
And so, do you have like any a testimony about someone that you helped that was just maybe going through something? They were feeling a little sad or depressed, and just working with them and getting them, health-wise and physically in shape really kind of transformed their lives.
I have many. So not only do I do the physical training and the health coaching, I'm also a facilitator of a faith-based weight loss class at my church called Bod for God. Also a faith-based nutrition class at my church called Treasures of Healthy Living. And they're countless of individuals. People have come to me. I had one individual who several individuals, most people have a lot of arthritis.
Yes.
Right? And
yes.
so we attribute that with getting old. And I'm like, no, I don't think so. I do believe you are what you eat. You are what you eat. And so a lot of the inflammation in the body is due to one of two things: lack of water, so dehydration.
Yes.
A lot of it is just processed foods. It's sugar. Right. Once you reduce the sugar in your life, I promise you'll feel 100% better. So I've had individuals who come to me, thought they would never run again, and they've gone on to do half marathons or 5Ks. I've had individuals who couldn't even lie down flat in the bed, had to sleep with their head propped up on the pillow because the acid reflux was so severe. Now they can lay down flat. I mean, people who couldn't lift up their arm more than this because the pain, now they can, I mean, just countless testimonies. Weight loss, helped an individual at my church through the Bod for God program. He's lost over 160 pounds over the last 2.5 years. So just small, simple changes. Again, helping people connect the dots, and how they feel every day has everything to do with what they eat and what they put in their body.
I know. I called Rochelle, I think, was it last summer? I think it was, because I said, as much as I work out, and I know the aging process in menopause. And then we just started talking about, what I was consuming, and a lot of it was inflammatory, inflammation, and so I had to really change my diet. One of the things, and we talked about for me, is eggs. We talked about eggs because I was eating eggs every day, a boiled egg, a slice of toast, or something every day. And so just cutting back on all of that, I really have noticed a big difference. I really have, and the coffee and all of that, I've just noticed a big difference, because I told my husband today, I don't eliminate anything from my diet. I eat in moderation, but it's just some things I don't eat because I just don't like it. But if I want, some French fries once a month, I'm going to eat some French fries once a month. But to consume that kind of food every day, it takes a toll on your body. And so for me, I reached out to Rochelle because I said, this is not making sense to me. And so, you helped me.
I'll talk to Rochelle after the show.
Yes. and so this is really leading up to your book. Show the audience your book and talk to us about this book. I love the title.
So the priority has to be you. 10 keys to achieving optimal health. And so the biggest misconception is people see me on Facebook every day exercising, or meal prepping. I go Facebook Live when I'm meal prepping. So they think, I'm going to get an exercise plan or meal prep. I'm like, no, this is all about getting your head right.
Yes.
And that's where it has to start.
Yes.
It has to start there, right? And so it's funny. The first chapter is perspective is everything.
Yes.
So, you change your perspective, you change your life, right? And so people say, Rochelle, can you give me a meal plan? Can you give me an exercise plan? And I could, because that's what I do. I said, but it won't last.
Right.
Because
you
still got that thinking.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, I like it.
You got to get your head right first.
Exactly.
Let's start here, and then we can get to the other stuff. And, people don't want to really address that, but that's where it starts, and for it to last. Because what I promote are lifelong changes, lifetime. I'm not into fast. I'm so basic. I keep it simple, right? I promote things that people can do for the rest of their lives. That's it.
And I think that's important,
right?
Because a lot of things out here is really just a fad, and it's not something you can sustain over time.
Absolutely.
And so when for me, I like beer. And so for somebody to, come up with something for me to do that don't include beer, it's just not going to work. I already know that.
That's right.
It's just not going to work, because I'm going to drink beer because I like beer. And so, we have to be realistic about it. Now, could I cut back on beer? Absolutely.
Yes.
It tastes good when it's real cold. But, I could cut back. I drink a lot of water, though. I try to, balance it. But, I think, when you say you keep it simple, I can't wait to hear about it, because I need something simple. I need something that not only is simple, but also I can incorporate into my current lifestyle. I work 12, 13 hours a day. I don't get home till 8 o'clock at night. So for somebody to tell me that I can't eat after 6 o'clock, it's just not realistic. I'm not even anywhere where I can get food at 6 o'clock. And so, I do take my breakfast and lunch to work every day. I guess I suppose I could take dinner too, but then, to me, I'm like moving in at that point. And I'm trying not to do that. And so, I need something, that's simple and something that, I could really do and, to sustain over time.
Absolutely. So, two things you said that I want to hit on. So keeping it simple, I believe in eating the food that God gave us, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That's all the expensive stuff.
No, not really. Not really.
You know, he gave us meat, he gave us fish, he gave us fruits, he gave us vegetables, he gave us nuts, seeds, legumes, right? Grains. That's what he gave us. Anything outside of that is a lab experiment as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
Right?
Exactly.
And so I keep it simple. My meal planning, if you see what I do chicken, I do salmon, I do vegetables, but it's all in the preparation, right? I don't use white sugar. You know, I use healthier, unprocessed sugars. I use sweetener though, no artificial sweetener, but I may use sucanat, you know, or just raw cane sugar. I haven't had white flour in my house in over 8 years, right? But I may have unbleached flour, you know, or different things. So it's just it's all in the preparation, right? And when you start to change those small things, your blood work starts to change. Right? So people say, "No, Rochelle, I'm healthy. I'm just on high blood pressure." I'm like, that ain't healthy.
Right.
I'm just on diabetes medication. That's not healthy.
Right, exactly.
That's not healthy. So when you tell me your A1C is where it needs to be, your triglycerides, your HDL, your LDL, your your cholesterol, your high blood pressure. I mean, your blood pressure. When it's where it needs to be, that's health. So blood work doesn't lie.
And so for me, you know, food, I just refuse to let food take me out of here.
Right.
That's just my mindset, my mantra. You said perspective is everything. That's a perspective. And I will do whatever I have to do to curtail, you know, to cut down. And one of the things I've started to do since I've gotten older is I'm eating smaller meals during the day. Blood sugar levels. And I'm not as tired, you know, and little meals. And I'm very particular about what that is. And for me, that's seeming to work. And so learning those simple things, and it's simple. It really is not that difficult. It's just simple. It's the preparation.
Right.
And making sure that you have what you need, you know, to carry you through the day so that you won't binge. And I don't find myself being hungry and binging when I go and teach a strayer. It's from 6 to 10 at night. I have the energy and the stamina because I've just started eating smaller meals. So what do you think about that?
I think that's great. And let me go back to Sherelle, because I forgot to say the other thing. You talked about moderation or just having a lifestyle. So I don't want anybody to think I'm at home eating wheatgrass. That's not what I do, okay? We eat food. We eat food at our house, right?
Yes.
Because I believe, you know, I do believe you have to eat to live, not live to eat, right? So it's the food and how we prepare it. But I'm all about 80-20 or 85-15, however you want to look at it. If you're eating right 80% of the time, that 20% when you deviate,
It's
okay.
okay. It's exactly right.
Because I will. If we want donuts, we're going to get donuts.
Yes.
If I want a burger, we're going to eat a burger. I'm not saying certain things we don't eat. I was just talking to my daughters this morning, and I said, we probably have soda maybe 4 times a year. So I can't say I don't drink it.
Right.
Maybe if you consider that drinking, about 4 times a year. So, you know, we don't do pork or whatever, but certain things we don't do. But I'm just saying, I believe in living our lives.
It's right.
You know?
Exactly.
But I do exercise every day. Drink our water and things like that. So going back to what you said.
Hold on, let me just say this. My brother-in-law said get that bread recipe before you get home.
Okay. I'll get it if you make it.
I didn't want that to go unsaid, Ira. I got your back. And then she going to invite me over when she make it.
You know, I'm not the baker. Ira actually can bake. He learned how to do that. I'm not a baker. So I'll get the recipe. So we have about 2 minutes. So go ahead.
So eating the small meals are great, not spiking the blood sugar. But what's more key is eating nutrient-dense food. Right.
Yes.
Instead of eating empty calories.
Right.
So a lot of people drink their calories, right?
Yes.
You're not getting full from that, right? And so when you're eating a lot of processed foods, a lot of white sugar, you don't get. That's why you can eat. Nobody gets full off Twinkies. You know, you can eat that all day. You don't get full off that stuff. But when you're eating nutrient-dense foods, leafy greens, protein, you know,
almonds, a few almonds,
things like that. They're very satiating. I mean, you're satisfied.
Exactly. So those are the types of things that we have to educate ourselves on. And I think, you know, it's different for everybody, depending on your body, depending on your goals. And so you just have to continuously figure it out, you know, and continuously do your research and find out what works for you. Look at the time. My goodness. Wow. So, Rochelle, if anybody wants to get in contact with you, how can they reach you?
Very simple. RochelleTParks.com. That's www.RochelleTParks.com. And you can also find me on Facebook, It's same thing, Rochelle T. Parks.
Yes, and Instagram.
Instagram.
You're on Instagram.
Rogam, RHOGAM, Rogam.
Yes, and so as Sherelle said earlier when we first started the show, I am not going to be here next week, and she is really in need of a co-host.
Yes.
And so we have a competition going on. So if you are interested in being a co-host, please just send us a few lines telling us why you think you should be the co-host while I am absent on next week. And it should be fun and entertaining and making sure that we continue to deliver great content, because that's really what it's all about.
Yes, absolutely.
And Rochelle, thank you so
Yes,
much.
thank you.
Anton, thank you so much for coming. And I hope our listening audience has really gotten some information out of the guests here today.
And we'll see you all next week. Have a great Sunday.
Yes, have a great Sunday.
Thank you.
Yay.